Welcome. Thank you for attending. Thank you for taking time out of your day to attend this. Hopefully it's useful and everybody can get something out of it, out of today's session. Quick overview on the agenda. We are going to be talking about setting up Google Analytics. We won't necessarily go into the reporting side of things. That's the webinar we've got scheduled in 2 weeks' time. Today's webinar is all about setting the Google Analytics account, what are the best practices, what are the things that you need to be wary of, and a few more related points. Quick overview on housekeeping. We will be sharing a Zoom link where this webinar will be available. There's not many tools or links that we will be sharing during the webinar. There's one link that if you are interested, you can use it. But otherwise, I think this presentation is pretty much the webinar. And again, as I mentioned previously, if you have any questions or concerns or anything that's not working, please use the Q&A section or raise your hand and we can sort it all out. A bit about me. I head up the performance and analytics team at Intego. Also one of the co-founders at Intego. I've been in digital marketing, advertising for about 9 years now. I'm originally from a finance and business background. That's what I graduated in. I worked in a stock market research company for about 6-7 months, but then I realized I hated finance, so I swapped careers very quickly and randomly ended up in digital marketing. I quite liked it, and here I am. I worked previously in some of the bigger agencies like PhD. Last job was at Group M, one of their agencies, and now been working at Intego since 2014. I'll let Gary introduce himself.
Hi, I think most of you know who I am anyway. I would just be supporting Priya, answering any questions you might have, and just kind of getting involved as and when required. Enjoy the session. I think I doubt it's going to take 2 hours. The session is an FYI. I think we'll be looking more for about an hour, just over. Chat to you all soon. Thanks. Bye.
Here's a quick overview on the kind of training we do. We're very big on training at Intego. We train with some industry bodies, recognized industry bodies like ADMA, IAB, etc. We do a lot of training for our clients, run webinars and face-to-face training like that, like the one that we're doing now. We've done training with other universities as well. So very big focus on training internally. All right, let's jump into the webinar. Before we get into the details of Google Analytics, I think it's important to answer the question why we need analytics. Here's a few reasons. There's a lot more than the reasons that we've specified on the slides, but here's a few reasons relevant to the digital sort of marketing field. Obviously, the data has become a huge thing over the last kind of 10 years. You know, especially if you work in digital marketing, advertising, the amount of data is enormous, and data in itself is almost meaningless unless it's turned into some kind of insight or something that you can action. And analytics is the process of basically doing that. You know, there's things that you can understand about your consumers. You can personalize marketing. You can decide your pricing, analyze the various channels that you have working for your brand or account or whatever have you. You can work on product development, whether it's a physical product or it's a software as a service or even your website. So analytics plays an important role in all of these things, and that's why you need analytics. I think the other big reason is making data-driven decisions, and for doing that, you need the insights that an analytics platform can provide. Very often, and I've certainly been in situations like that where the hippo or the highest paid person's opinion is counted as the final opinion on a matter, and without any kind of data-led information or anything like that, hippo's decision is the final call. So to counter that, you need analytics to make these data-driven decisions. A bit about the analytics landscape. I think most people are familiar with Google Analytics, which is probably the most widely used analytics platform anywhere in the world. There are other tools out there as well. You may recognize some names that are put on the slide. Adobe Analytics is probably the second biggest analytics provider, especially in the marketing sort of advertising technology space. But there are a load of other platforms that are available out there. Some have data privacy centric platforms. They try to position themselves a little bit differently to what Google Analytics is, but Analytics definitely isn't the only provider that we have available. Why Google Analytics? I think it's an analytics platform, and for all the reasons that we mentioned above or went through previously, you need an analytics platform, and Google Analytics is an analytics platform that can provide you the insight that you need to make informed decisions. But beyond that, I think there's various other reasons that you might be using Google Analytics. It's very easy to use and navigate. Google, I think, have done a great job with all their platforms to make it as user-friendly as possible, and Analytics is no different. It's very intuitive. Certainly the easiest to use analytics platforms amongst various platforms that I've used. It has integrations with other platforms like Salesforce, and obviously all the other Google products like Google Ads, Search Ads 360, which are heavily used in the advertising marketing industry. So it becomes kind of the obvious choice because the integration is seamless. Google is very big on machine learning and AI, and the capabilities are getting introduced within the Google Analytics platforms on a daily basis. And Google has probably one of the best machine learning AI products in the world at the moment. You can create audiences in Google Analytics. This capability is available in other platforms as well, but because the integration with products like Google Ads is so seamless, you can create audiences and just push them back into other platforms very easily. It's highly customizable. You can create calculated fields or custom dimensions and custom reports to your liking if the standard reports and other standard things aren't doing the job for you. And I think one of the biggest reasons, and probably the biggest reason, is that Google Analytics is free to use. There is a paid version called Google Analytics 360 for larger enterprise level clients, but I think the free version does the job very well for, I'd say, 80 to 90% of the clients or websites out there. A quick overview on how Google Analytics actually works. I think this is a very simplified diagram, but I think at an overview level, it works quite well. Essentially, Google Analytics is a tag-based tracking platform. There's a piece of JavaScript that goes onto the website. Anytime a user comes to the website where this JavaScript has been implemented, it will set cookies. I'm not going to go into details of what cookies are, but basically cookie is a piece of code that stores information about a user that comes to the site. This tag then, once it's collected this information, passes this information back to the Google servers, and they process the information and send it back to Google Analytics, where we all, the end users, can view this information in a human readable format. Obviously, there's a lot of other things, other technologies that play a part in this whole process, but I think this is a very good overview on how Google Analytics works. I'm going to try and play a little video that actually goes into a little bit more detail on how Google Analytics works. Just going to exit my PowerPoint and go in here.
Hi, Pri. Just to let you know, we can't actually hear any sound. I don't know if there's a problem with the video. If there is, maybe just send the link through in the chat box.
Yeah, I mean, the sound is on my laptop and for the video as well. I might just send a link and people can view in their own time.
Okay.
I'm not sure why it's not working.
All right, not to worry.
I'll just no. Right, let's jump back into the presentation. Hopefully everyone can still see it. Cool. This is the actual Google Analytics tag that we were talking about previously that goes onto the website. We'll talk about this a little bit more in the later slides as well, and where to exactly find this. But this was just to show what the actual tag looks like. Now, Google Analytics can be implemented via another product called Google Tag Manager, which makes everything a lot easier and the implementation process a lot more streamlined and requires very little dev effort. Also, Google's recommended way to actually implement Google Analytics tags. So if you are implementing a Google Analytics tag, unless there is a specific reason to have it on the site as a standalone tag, implement it using Google Tag Manager. A quick overview on why Google Tag Manager. Tag Manager is as it says in the name, manages all your tags in one place. All you need to do is implement the Tag Manager tag, and that's it really. After that, all the other tags are mostly deployed using the Tag Manager interface, which is again very easy to use and very intuitive. I think one of the big benefits of using Google, couple of big benefits of using Google Tag Manager are it provides a preview and debugging functionality, so you can preview whether your tag is firing as expected. And the other thing is, I think it saves time for everyone. You don't really need to go to your devs and ask them to implement various tags. With little to no development knowledge, you should be able to implement some of the basic tags within Google Tag Manager without much help. And again, it's the standard version is free to use. All right, let's jump into the actual setup for Google Analytics. I'm going to talk about some of the basic things that you need to be wary of when you're creating or setting up a brand new Google Analytics account. Creating an account is a very simple process. Go to this link that's on the slide and just follow the prompts. What you need is a Gmail or an account or an email that's associated with a Google account. That's probably the only prerequisite that you need to be wary of when creating a Google Analytics account. There is a demo account available. The link, I can share the link in the chat, but if you want to follow some of the following slides, you can go to this link, and if you have a Gmail or a Google account, log in using that, and you should be able to access a demo account, which is Google owned. It's based on Google's merchandising store, and you can follow some of the slides alongside. I'll try and share this with everyone. Cool. If you have any questions or issues with accessing this account, please let us know. Otherwise, let's jump into it. When you log into a Google Analytics account, this is one of the views that you might see. What we're going to be talking about is the admin console today, which is the link to which is located on the left bottom corner as highlighted. Once you click on it, this is what the page or the console looks like. Now you can see there's a lot of things going on. There's the account, property, view, and there's various other settings underneath. We'll go through most of these sections in the subsequent slides. But before that, something important to know and understand is how the account is set up and what's the hierarchy. In simplest terms, the account is the overview or the overall or the topmost level that exists in Google Analytics. Once you sign up to a Google Analytics account, you create an account first, and underneath that would sit various properties, and underneath each property you can set up various views. There are limits on how many properties and how many views you can set up underneath each element, which are on the slides. But essentially your structure should be based on your business requirements or how your website is structured or how your products are structured and so on and so forth. So as an example, if you were a clothing retailer who operates in Europe or worldwide, you'd probably create a Europe account, and underneath the Europe account you could have a property per country, so Germany and France, for example. And underneath each of these properties, you might have a view that has all your data and another view that you want to use to only look at menswear, and similarly for other properties as well. When you're creating a property, it's usually limited to a domain. So each domain should have its own property, but there might be certain circumstances where you might have to have more than one domain sending data back to a single property. The next thing we're going to talk about is user management. User management has come a long way in Google Analytics. Earlier, the permission levels and so on, it was a bit tricky to manage, but they've streamlined it quite nicely. You can basically give access to users at all the 3 levels. So if you were the account owner and you want someone else to be the owner as well, you obviously would give that person access at the account level. In our example, if you had managers or people working on the Germany account, you might want them to have access at the property level, so they won't be able to view data for other properties, like or other countries in the example. And you can also give people access at the view level. User management is quite important. I think this is something that's often quite overlooked. Make sure when you create an account, you have a list of users at various levels that you want to add. Obviously, your data is important. It's like a currency to you, so you won't be giving access to your bank account to anyone. It's exactly the same situation. So please be careful with who you give access to. As I said, management, the user management console is quite intuitive. You just add the users in, give them permissions at the level that you want them to. There's various levels of access. You can provide them access that only gives them reading ability, so they can't really change anything, all the way up to managing users. So if you have managed users access, you can pretty much do anything at whatever level that access has been provided. So those are some of the kind of key basic points that you should bear in mind when you create an account. Now we're going to talk about the setup at various levels that we went through previously. So account level, property level, and view level, and what are the things that we need to keep in mind when setting things up. At the account level, there's actually not a lot that you can do. The account is almost like a shell, if that makes sense. Not much happens at the account level. It's just kind of a holding account. So all you can do is really name your account and look at these or check these couple of data sharing options that are there. The important thing here is to review and accept the data processing amendment. Obviously, this is more relevant to countries and territories that are regulated by GDPR, but Google Analytics has decided to launch this data processing amendment across all properties, irrespective of whether GDPR is, I think in Australia or wherever else, it's not applicable at the moment. But the intention is, or Google's expectation is, that some kind of privacy laws will come into account in pretty much every country in the future. So they have this already in place. Those are the only couple of things that you can do at the account level. As I said, it's more like the account level is more of a kind of a holding shell system than anything else. Most of the things or changes that you make will happen at the property level, which we'll talk about now. Once you click on the property settings link, it'll open up a screen that looks a bit like this. I think the main things here are, make sure when you're setting up the default URL, you put in your website and match the protocol to whatever your website has. I mean, these days, pretty much every website is HTTPS, but if you are using HTTP, make sure that you match the protocol in Google Analytics. You can choose to overwrite the UTM, the GCLID values under the advanced settings section, but unless it's needed, just leave it unchecked. The last bit, which is demographic and interest reporting, always turn on if you have particular concerns about Google Analytics recording data about your users around demographics and interests. This will enable reporting at demographic and interest level, which can be quite key to making customer profiles and so on, and also creating audiences. Another setting that's relatively new is user analysis. Again, we're in the property settings section still. Always, again, leave it on unless there's a specific reason to turn it off. This enables a new method of calculating users within Google Analytics. They recently changed how the user metric within Google Analytics is calculated, and this turning on means that the new methodology will be used, which is a lot more accurate than the previous method that Google Analytics was using. Next section that you need to look at is the tracking info. Under tracking info, there's various options you can see on the left-hand navigation bar. We'll go through most of them one by one, and I'll try and explain what they each do. The first one is tracking code. If you remember in one of the previous slides, I showed you a screenshot of pretty much this page. This is where you get your tracking code from. If you are implementing the Google Analytics tag as a standalone tag, this is where the tag sits. If you are using Google Tag Manager, then there's another method to implement the tag. The next section is data collection. Again, just like that, at the property settings level, we turned on the demographic and interest collection. There is a data collection for Google Signal section, which enables Google to provide data on cross devices. And without this feature being turned on, Google won't be able to do that. So the recommendation is to leave it on unless you have a specific reason to turn it off. The second section, which is again in this screenshot, relatively new, is you can now personalize by region. So if you click on that gear box, it opens up another window where you can select by country or region where you want personalization to happen. Again, no need to change anything. Leave it as is for now, unless there's something that you need to do differently in specific territories, which is very uncommon, I'd say. The next section is around data retention. This section, the default is what you see on the screenshot. With the whole GDPR and data privacy and the chat around all those issues, you can see that Google has given us various options to control data, and this is only going to get more, the emphasis on this is only going to increase in the future. So Google gives us the ability to retain, to specify how long we want to retain the data that we are collecting. As I said, the default is don't automatically expire, just leave it as that unless you want to change it to something else for a specific reason. Reset on new activity actually resets the retention day. So again, unless you want to reset the retention every time a user visits to your website, leave it as on. So don't change these settings unless you have a very specific reason to do it. The next section you should probably look at is session settings. By default, and again, these are the default values that you are seeing on the screenshot. By default, the session timeout, which means when a session expires, is 30 minutes in Google Analytics. Sometimes there are specific reasons to have a session timeout that's longer or shorter. For example, if you are a content-based website and you have a lot of reading and you expect users to spend a lot of time on the website, and it may be longer than 30 minutes, and you might need to change it or increase it to an hour, for example. And the same goes with campaign timeout. If there is a specific reason to change it, but otherwise the default values will work for pretty much every single case. I haven't come across a situation where we've had to change the session timeout or the campaign timeout so far. Next section we'll talk about is referral exclusion. Use this section to add any kind of referral exclusions that you might want to. As a standard practice, you always add your own domain as a referral exclusion. The internet works in a weird way, and so does Google Analytics. Sometimes you see traffic coming from your own website for various reasons. It might be a glitch, might be something else. So when you set up a Google Analytics property, always set up a referral exclusion for your own website. And further down the track, you might realize that there are other referrals that you need to exclude, as we have done for our website. Those are all the things that I think you need to keep in mind when you're setting up a property. There are a couple other things that we'll probably talk about that are a little bit more advanced. We'll talk about after we go through the view and view level settings. So under view, if you click on view settings, this is the screen that you come across. Again, just like the URL that you defined at the property level, you have the ability to define the URL at the view level as well. The time zone is something that people may miss sometimes. We've had accounts where the time zone hasn't been properly set up, and then the data is skewed when we're doing analysis on ad scheduling and so on and so forth. So please make sure that your time zone is correctly set up. The same goes for the currency. You'd be surprised that there's a lot of instances where the currency has been set to or left at default, which is USD in Google Analytics. So please make sure that you set it up according to whatever currency it needs to be. And I think from
sorry to interrupt you. Would there be a problem if you had your analytics set up in USD, as you said, the default, and your paid search campaign was in AUD? What would GA do? Would there just be two different?
GA,
how would it work?
Google Analytics will convert everything into USD.
Okay.
So if your advertising data or your cost data is in another currency, it will convert it based on its own conversion. I'm not sure where it takes the conversion factors from, but everything would be displayed in USD.
Perfect. Thanks, mate.
And I think last bit, probably the most important, is bot filtering. This is a major issue, and always have it ticked, because Google monitors all the bot traffic that comes to the websites, and it has a list of which it updates regularly, known bots that it automatically excludes traffic from. If you have it unchecked, the chances of you getting spam data into your account is very high, I'd say. So definitely make sure that bot filtering is turned on when you are setting up a Google Analytics account. I think the next section we'll talk about is conversions. We'll talk about how to set up goals and what events are, and how to set them all up. But before we jump into it, I think before you set up a Google Analytics account, you need to understand what you want to track or what you should be tracking, and create a bit of a measurement plan. Without doing that, I think you'll be basically flying blind, and you might set up something that's incorrect or doesn't really match with what your actual goals or KPIs are. So always create a measurement plan which aligns with your business goals. And then you can start implementing tracking in Google Analytics, which in turn will give you the reporting that you want in the platform. I think this is something that most people kind of miss out. They create a Google Analytics account and post-event, they start thinking about conversion tracking. That's not the right way to do things. Always create your measurement or conversion plan before setting up the Google Analytics account. Next up is what you can actually track in Google Analytics. The key things that you can track or ways to track things is as per the slide. You can track goals. You can track something called events. If you have an e-commerce website, you can track revenue and transaction level data. Google Analytics also gives you the ability to import data from other systems through this facility called offline data imports. So if you have CRM data that you want to upload into Google Analytics so that all your data sits in one place, there is the ability to do that. It gets a little bit complicated, but we won't be talking about that today. And usually goals are your primary conversions. So if you're a website that has two conversions, one is clicking on a PDF, for example, and the other is a lead submission. The lead submission is, potentially your primary goal, and that's what something that can be set up as a goal within Google Analytics. You can set up the clicks on PDF as an event because it's a bit of a softer conversion that you don't really want to monitor or report on a regular basis. Talk about how to create a goal. Under the view section and clicking on goals, it opens up this window. This is for our website, Indego Digital website. If you click on new goal, it opens up another window which looks like this. There's a couple of options when it comes to creating a goal. You can use a template, as this screenshot suggests. There's various templates or inbuilt templates that Google Analytics provides, like reservations, contact us, and so on, that you can use to create a goal. This option is used very rarely, I'd say, because you need to do some background work and your website needs to be structured in a certain way for these to actually work. Most of the time you'd create a goal using the custom method, which is the following. So instead of choosing the template radio box, you click on custom and click continue, and it opens up this window. Within this setup, you can choose what type of goal you want the goal to be. There's 4 options. There's a destination-based goal, which is simply put a URL that's going to act as a goal for you. So for example, going back to a lead form submission, you might have a thank you page that generates once a lead is submitted, and tracking lead submissions would be equivalent of tracking the thank you page loads. So you take that thank you page URL and add it to your destination-based goal, and that's a job done. You might want to create a duration-based goal as well. Again, if you're a blog or a website which is very heavy on content, you might want to see how long people are on the website and how much content they're consuming. So duration and pages per screen can be handy in analyzing performance of your website if you are catering towards that audience. And the last is event-based goal, which we'll talk about in a bit. So as I was saying, for creating a destination-based goal, just get the URL that you want to track as a goal. If it's a thank you page, then it's a thank you page. Add that URL in, Google Analytics, one cool thing about Google Analytics is if you have the data available, you can verify this goal. It'll give you a conversion rate that suggests that your goal is actually working. Obviously, if it's a brand new account, this won't be possible. But if you have the ability to do and verify a goal, definitely use it. The next setup would be around events. As I said, I think in the initial section, I mentioned that events are something of a software conversion, but events are also very versatile and very customizable. So you can do really anything with events. So if you want to track various clicks on the website or any links or outbound links or anything like that, events can be used to set it all up. Sometimes there is no thank you page available on a lead form submission, so you might have to set up an event-based goal. And this is how you would set up an event-based goal. It needs these three values: category, action, label. Not all of them are required. The only required thing is here a category. Action, label, and value are actually optional. I'm not going to be talking about how to set up the events actually, but this just gives you an overview of how to set up a goal based off an event. You can obviously use Google Analytics to track e-commerce. E-commerce is usually the most difficult thing to set up in Google Analytics. It becomes a little bit easier if you are using Google Tag Manager, but it certainly needs development help. It needs a lot of testing to make sure the data is coming through correctly and so on. But if you have set up e-commerce tracking, always remember to turn this e-commerce setting on. Without this, none of that setup will work. If you have set up e-commerce tracking and this little box is turned off, no data will be coming through into your account at all. So we've had instances where we've set up, or the client has set up e-commerce tracking and someone's forgotten to turn this on, and after many hours of testing e-commerce tracking and data, we've realized that this button was off all the time, and once we turned it on, everything was working fine. So definitely remember to do that. There's another section under e-commerce settings called Enhanced E-commerce, which is basically the next level of e-commerce tracking in simplest terms. Google Analytics with standard e-commerce doesn't really handle refunds or promo codes or things like that. And I think nowadays, especially any e-commerce website has that functionality of doing, promotion codes, doing refunds, and so on and so forth. Enhanced e-commerce tracking enables that within GA, so it integrates with your shopping platform a lot more than just standard e-commerce setup would, and gives you more metrics, more data, and it's a lot more accurate. But again, the downside is that tracking enhanced e-commerce can be a very cumbersome, laborsome task. So sometimes you may find that the effort that goes into tracking enhanced e-commerce isn't actually worth it. So it's really a question of what the payoff would be at the end of the day. So those were the key kind of things that you need to keep in mind when you're setting up the account. If you go through the account setup and you have followed what we've just went through, I think most accounts would be set. You'd get data coming through that's accurate. You can analyze that data. You can get insights from that data. And it would be usable. But there are a few other things that you can do as well if you wish, and if you have the ability to further enhance that data and yeah, get more insights out of your data as well. So we talk about a few advanced things that you can set up as well. The first thing is filters. Usually you would want to go live with some sort of filtering on your account. Filters are set up at the view level or implemented at the view level. The most common filter that is used is an IP filter. If you're a fairly large organization and everyone is in the office is on your website all the time, then all of that office traffic is not really your customer data or customer traffic. So you want to exclude all of that. And the best way to do it is by using a filter that excludes traffic coming from a certain IP, which can be your office IP. So you can see in this screenshot, this is again our account. The first filter is excluding Indago's IP. So any of us in the office who are on the website won't be included in this particular view in terms of traffic and other metrics. There are certain other filters that you can add as well. Maybe you want to see traffic only from a particular country, so you can add that. For example, Australia versus New Zealand could be a good example, and so on and so forth. Setting up filters is relatively easy, depending on the type of filter that you're setting up. There are certain predefined filters that are available. For example, predefined from a particular destination or an IP, and all you need to do is add in the IPs and it works. But there's also the option to create some advanced custom filters as well if you need. For example, a filter that enables the view to only collect data from a list of particular URLs, you can create that, but the way to do it would be through a custom filter. If you're running Google Ads, definitely link your Google Ads account to Google Analytics. Again, a lot of people forget it, but if you do it, all your Google Ads data will be visible in Google Analytics. And you can see Google Analytics metrics side by side with Google Ads metrics and enhance the reporting that you have on your campaigns that you're running on Google Ads. So I definitely recommend doing this. It's fairly easy to link accounts. All you need is your customer ID that you want to, of the Google Ads account that you want to link to Google Analytics. Once you click on that Google Ads link, it'll take you through certain prompts. If you follow the prompts, it's fairly easy to understand. You select the views that you want this data to go to. And at the end, there's this option to enable display network impression reporting. This option is available upon request and essentially enables impression level tracking in Google Analytics, which otherwise isn't available. If you are running display campaigns in Google Ads, I definitely recommend exploring this option and turning this on when you're linking your Google Ads account. As I mentioned in the beginning, there's a whole heap of other products as well that you can link to Google Analytics. If you go to the all products section under property, you can see a list of various products that you can link. Most of them are Google owned properties, which makes sense because they have direct integrations available. But there are links available to non-Google products as well, like Salesforce. Things like Salesforce are limited to the paid version of Google Analytics, but I think for someone running Google Ads, linking Google Ads is probably the bare minimum, I'd say. Next section we'll talk about is calculated metrics. Under view, there is a section called calculated metrics. It says beta against it. It's been in beta for, I'd say, 5 years. It's never come out of it, but it works perfectly fine. I'm not sure why Google still has it in beta. But Google gives you, or Analytics gives you, the ability to create your own metrics in Google Analytics. Sometimes the predefined metrics might not be the ones that you're after. For example, you might want to look at a specific cost per conversion or a cost per lead, which may not be available within the predefined predefined metrics in Google Analytics. This gives you the ability to create your own metrics, and you can analyze your data against those metrics. Again, very easy to set it all up. If you click on creating a new calculated metric, it opens up this window. Select your type, whether it's a percentage or a currency or whatever the metric is, and just input the formula. So all you need to understand or know is what the metrics would be that will go into the formula, and the actual formula itself, and create the calculated metric, and should be immediately available for viewing in the reports. Next section is about audiences. I briefly spoke about one of the big benefits of actually using Google Analytics is the ability to create audiences. Some of the audiences are actually already created. As soon as you create a Google Analytics account, some of the audiences, like all users, will all be automatically created. And if you have Google Ads linked to your Google Analytics account, these audiences would be automatically pushed to that particular Google Ads account for use in your search campaigns or display campaigns or whatever have you. The ability to create audiences is enormous in Google Analytics. You can literally create an audience based off almost any dimension metric. So you can create audiences based on, a dimension called city, which as the name suggests, there's various cities. So you can have an audience that's Sydney specific, Melbourne specific, and so on and so forth. You can create an audience based on demographic data, so age brackets, gender, interests as well. So the options are almost endless. Next section is a bit around the custom definitions. Underneath the property section, there's a section called custom definitions. This is probably the most advanced thing that you can, or one of the most advanced things that you can set up. Sometimes the custom, the predefined dimensions in Google Analytics aren't really what you need, or they don't fulfill the purpose that you're after. Google Analytics gives you the ability to create your own dimensions. There is a limit on how many dimensions you can create. It's 20. But the limit of 20 is actually more than enough for really everyone. The next section is around data imports. In the conversion section, I mentioned that you can upload your own data into Google Analytics as well. It potentially can be data from your CRM or your stores, or any other kind of offline source that you might be using, so that all your data sits in one place. One of the most common things that we set up for our clients is uploading cost data. So it could be cost data from channels, other advertising channels, like if you're running Microsoft advertising, Google doesn't automatically track all the cost data from Microsoft Ads into analytics, but you have the ability to upload that cost data using data imports. You can upload cost data from your other channels as well. Sometimes we upload data from other offline channels like TV and radio, so that all the cost data kind of sits in one place for our clients, and it's just easier to analyze and report on and derive insights from. I think those were the few kind of key things when it comes to the advanced setup. Some of these things can be quite tricky to implement, but once implemented, I think the level of insights and the quality of data is actually improved quite a bit. We'll talk about some of the must-haves that you should look for or have when setting up a Google Analytics account. I think first thing that we're going to talk about is annotations. Probably one of the least used features in Google Analytics across every single account, but probably one of the most important. Google Analytics gives you the ability to write annotations within the platform, so that if there's a major change or a major spike or a decline in really any metric, you can leave a note within Google Analytics for other users to look at and understand why that spike or decline happened. Again, if you've made any major change to the website that might drastically or significantly change the metrics within Google Analytics, write a little annotation on that date, so that people who are looking at the other users who are looking at the account are able to look at the annotation and figure out what's exactly going on.
Oh, Preet.
Yeah.
I mean, I totally agree with you with annotations. I also think it's really important when you're making changes to your external campaigns. I think especially when you're making changes to, for example, SEO, maybe you implemented a site speed test. The year afterwards, you want to understand why you had that increase. You want to understand the effect that the changes in your marketing is having on your analytics. And I think, there's nowhere else better to have it than in the annotations, because obviously, it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I think SEO changes, or if you've increased your budget in Google Ads and you have your Google Ads account linked up, leave an annotation for that particular change as well. And as Gary mentioned, I think when you're comparing year-on-year information, very hard to kind of figure out what's happened in the previous year, but these annotations can be very helpful when you're doing year-on-year analysis. This screenshot just quickly shows you how annotations look like in the actual platform and where they appear and how to add them. Just click on that create new annotation link and you should be able to add a quick sentence. Change history is actually relatively new in Google Analytics. It didn't have the ability to check what changes have been made, but it's great that this has changed, because this was a feature that was definitely missing. If you miss your annotations, this could be a good place to come to see what changes have happened within the account. This is what the section actually looks like. You can click on it and it goes back quite a long way, so 2+ years. I wasn't able to find out how exactly far back it goes. It just says 2+ years, and Google hasn't really specified what the exact look back window for change history is. But even 2 years is a long period of time. So if you find that the annotations aren't really helpful, you can always come and look at the change history of the account or the property to see and figure out what's exactly going on and what the changes were. I think another feature that's not used as much as it should be is custom alerts. Something that we set up for pretty much all our clients, I'd say, and all Google Analytics accounts should use this feature. You want to be alerted if there's a significant change in the metrics that matter to you. For example, if you look at the screenshot, we've got a custom alert that sends an email out to relevant users when daily sessions decrease by 25% or increase by 25%. You know, if you're an e-commerce website, something like that is an absolute must. If your revenue or conversion rate is dropping by a significant percentage, whatever that percentage is, set up an alert so that, you know, all the relevant users can be alerted and someone can look into what's actually going on, if there is indeed something wrong with the account or the campaign or the website, whatever have you. When you're setting up your Google Analytics account, we talked about the hierarchy. The account sits at the top level, and then you have the property level and then views. When you're setting up views, it's best practice to set up 3 different views. One acts as your master view, where you collect your data, which is used for reporting, and the main view that you actually look at, and everyone within the organization looks at. The second view is for testing purposes. So very rarely you'll have a website which requires no changes. You'd be making constant changes to your website, additions, subtractions, you know, new functionality and so on. And you want a view where you can test all those additional bits and pieces. And that's the use case for creating a testing view, so that it doesn't really meddle or skew with your actual master view or the data or the view where you get your data from. The last view is called the raw data view. And the raw data view houses all the data as is, without any filtration or any kind of additions or exclusions at all. So the importance of this is, sometimes if you have applied a particular filter to a view, it might skew your data massively, or it might exclude the data that you don't want excluded. And in that case, raw data can be your fallback view. So you can still get the data that you want from the raw data view. So that's the reason why you would set up the view with no filtration or anything like that. I think that's most of the things that you need to be wary of or need to consider when you're setting up a Google Analytics account. There's obviously a lot more that goes on, but I think if you were to set up an account using these things or these points and consider these things, the account should be in a very good shape from the get-go. The advanced things obviously can be set up once you've done the initial setup and you have all the basics in place. But definitely, if you follow these as best practices, you should have a Google Analytics account set up in a very good way. I'm going to quickly talk about the future of Google Analytics as a product. There was a recent announcement that Google made about something called Google Analytics 4, which is the latest iteration of Google Analytics. The current iteration of Google Analytics is called Universal Analytics, but the future or the latest version that Google has released is called GA4. I mentioned things like privacy, data controls, etc., and the emphasis actually increasing over time. You know, consumers becoming a bit more aware of where the data is going and whether they want to share data. And if you follow the whole kind of data environment space, you must have read the declining use of cookies, which are essential to actually tracking any kind of tracking really, including Google Analytics. Google Analytics 4 or GA4 is Google's take on all of these topics. They've considered the use of the declining use of cookies. They've considered the data controls that are needed to create websites in the future, and the ability to track not just websites, but a lot of user activity happens within apps these days as well. They've considered all of this and created this product called GA4. It is out. It's still in beta. Everyone's kind of testing it, trialing it, how it looks like. But essentially, they've built this keeping in mind what the future holds. You get a lot more insights into performance. It's built to give you automated insights into your performance data. So something like custom alerts that we spoke about, if there was a significant increase or decrease in a particular metric, Analytics 4 is designed to automatically notify users of changes like that. I mentioned Google's machine learning and AI capabilities being one of the best in the world, and they've implemented or applied those capabilities in GA4 to fill in the gaps that the declining use of cookies will leave, especially when it comes to conversion tracking. And Google's take is that by using machine learning and artificial intelligence, they can fill in those gaps and still have the data as before. And the data is, the testing that they've done suggests that that fill gap method is not very far from what the use of cookies would provide. So, which is great news. The other, I think, critical thing, as I mentioned before, was tracking websites and apps in one place. It's been a long time coming. Usually, up until now, GA has been specific to website tracking. There was a GA product that tracks apps in particular, but they always sat in different silos. So GA4 is going to bring all of that together in one place, and you should have a unified view of your data and your conversion data and your consumer data in one place. So I think when you're setting up your Google Analytics account, set up the universal analytics as is, as you would, according to the best practices and the methods that we've just gone through. But if you can, and if you have the ability to set up GA4 alongside, definitely do it as well, because that's where the future is. In a couple of years' time, you probably won't be using universal analytics anymore. So if you are ready from this point onwards, it'll definitely be beneficial for the future. And that was it from my side. Hopefully you found the session useful, and there were some useful tips and ideas that you picked up and you would be using when you're setting up the Google Analytics account. If there's any questions, I'm happy to stay around and answer them.
Great, thanks. I really appreciate it. Just to let you all know, we'll shortly be putting the webinar on our blog and sending you all the links. So you have that to review in your own time. Really appreciate everyone's time. As Preet said, if you have any questions, use the chat box, or they're probably not the easiest format when it comes to asking analytics questions. Again, any other questions, you're welcome to ping your account manager as well. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.